folks, Rich here at RCinformer.com. Thanks for checking out this video on the Artec SBOC 342 from MotionRC.com. The sample video that you just saw prior to this is really just a small look at what this airplane will do. I have an entirely separate flying video on this plane that I have a link at the end of this video, or you can go to RC Informer on YouTube and check out the full flying video where my friend Steve Washington did a tremendous 3D demo with this thing, where he really did some hardcore 3D and put this thing through its paces. And to give you an idea of what this thing will do, it really does have quite a wide range of performance. If you're looking for something inexpensive that you can do a lot of fast flying with, precision aerobatics, this is a real good way to go. And if you really like to do hardcore 3D, as you can see from that video, if you watch the video where Steve does the flying, he really does some serious hardcore 3D with this, and it's pretty impressive. Now, this build video is going to really go through a lot of the aspects of getting this thing together. It does build very easily. In fact, there's only 2 screws that put this whole thing together. Then you put your prop and spinner on, and it's pretty much ready to go. The wings just sort of plug in with a spar, and then 2 pins that just press fit into place, and the plane disassembles easily. It has a solid one-piece aluminum spar that puts the wings together and makes this thing really rigid for really almost any kind of flying that you want to do. The biggest thing I'm going to point out with this airplane that you'll find in the build guide, you'll see as it's coming up here, is really the cooling on this airplane. There wasn't a whole lot of cooling running through this, but it's really easy to add. A couple holes up front, holes in the back, a little adjustment in the middle of the fuselage on the inside, and you'll have air running through this thing easily. All the flying demos you see of this airplane, in fact, this plane, as you're seeing right now, all the flying's already been done, and I already put the video together at this point. And it's just stock. Everything you see in the video is just the stock motor, stock speed controller, and it's quite impressive for a stock setup. One complaint I do have about this airplane is the paint. The paint has a tremendously really nice shiny finish to it, but it's also a little bit flaky. The orange part you don't have to worry too much about unless you run the airplane or ding it into a wall or something. Mostly just it's the black portions, especially around the wheel pants. When it scrapes the grass, it does tend to take the paint off. The paint's just a little flaky. But the nice thing is a little bit of acrylic black paint or black magic marker, and you can touch it up. And you can see how nice this airplane looks after just a real mild airbrushing. I just airbrushed over the black, cleaned it up, and it looks good as new. So it's real easy touching up a plane, especially the portions that are black. This video, guys, is going to really go through an entire review of this airplane. It's going to show you all the parts in detail. I'm going to go through the assembly process of it, which is quite simple. And then I've got a lot of tips and a lot of suggestions for getting this thing together and to fly it real successfully. Anyway, guys, without further delay, let's get on with the build guide. To start off the review of the Artec SBOC 342 from Motion RC, we got the box here in the mail. Looks like it's in real nice shape. Came via UPS. We can see on the side, Artec SBOC 342, orange and black, receiver ready. Let's go ahead and open it up and take a look inside. With the shipping box removed, we can see the SBOC 342 outside box. Real nice colorful package with all the specs on the front of it. As I flip it over to the side here, you can see the 2 versions. We're going to be putting this orange, black, blue, and white one here together. It's a little bit of a different paint job, but I think it looks pretty sharp. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and get the box top off, and we'll take a look inside. With the outside box removed, we get a good look here inside the packaging of the SBOC 342. No foam inside this thing, guys. This is packaged nicely with just wood boxes and bags, and everything's all taped in so it doesn't move around. Let me go ahead and get all the parts out and lay them out for you. As I was getting the SBOC 342 out of the box, I noticed a couple things worth mentioning. They used a lot of Velcro to keep this thing tied down with, so you'll be getting a lot of Velcro with this thing. Kind of an interesting way to package it. I've never seen a plane kind of done this way before. Also, right under the airplane, or the fuselage that was that the actual fuselage was attached to, was this wing box, which I thought was another real interesting way to package stuff. I'd never seen this before, but I thought I'd open it up here in front of you and just kind of show you how they do this. It's really just a form-fitting box that keeps the wings in there and really kind of keeps them nice and protected. So anyway, I'll get all these things out, lay them out, and give you a closer look. Here's the layout of all the parts that came out of the box. Artec no doubt has a much different finish than a lot of the other manufacturers. It has almost like a thick paint, like a shell type coating around everything, and it's real shiny looking. Very neat looking finish. All the parts include the fuselage that you see here with a pilot in it, and the hatch, the battery hatch canopy that opens up. There's a bag of wing pins here with a screwdriver to put everything together. Elevator and horizontal stabilizer. Here's the rudder here, which has an interesting hinge design that I'll show you a little closer here. And then here's the landing gear that just snaps right in place. 12.6 propeller. These two vertical surfaces that you can plug onto the wings. Really interesting spinner. And you can see right here the spar tube, which is actually it's not a tube, it's actually a solid piece of aluminum, and then the two wing panels. Now let me go ahead and show you a much closer view of all of these parts. Starting off with the fuselage, this is a really kind of slick looking airplane. The paint surface, like I said before, it almost has like a shell type appearance to it, and it's very, very shiny. The advantages of it is that it looks really good. It's really a nice looking paint job. Probably kind of the downside to it a little bit is it probably tends to ding easily. I noticed here on the inside, as I messed with the paint a little bit, I can see that when I touch it kind of the wrong way, it does kind of scrape up a little bit. So I don't worry about that too much, because I use an airbrush a lot to touch up a lot of these foam airplanes. So to me, that's not too big of a deal. But just keep in mind when you're handling this, like all foam planes, you want to just be careful you don't ding it. But this does tend to ding a little easier than the others, just because of the way the paint is applied. One thing I usually check out, one of the first things I look at is the alignment of the center line of the shaft of the motor, and see if it lines up here with the cowl and the spinner. And it looks like it's pretty close to being in the center. It might be a little off into the corner because there's a pretty tight fitting spinner on this thing that fits in there. So we'll check that out as we get into it. But anyway, looking up front, there's magnets that hold this thing on. There's 4 magnets, 1 on the top and the bottom and 2 on the sides, that keep this thing into place. And you can see the opposite sides of the magnets here on the cowling. And the cowling has definitely adequate cooling going into it. The 700 kV motor, slightly different design that I've seen. I've never really seen a mount quite like this, but it looks like it's really mounted in there pretty securely. They glued this sort of diamond mount in there, and it actually looks like it's screwed in there too as well. And you can see the mount has its own sort of standoffs to it. It's kind of an interesting design. It looks real rugged, so that's the important thing. Anyway, as we run along the side and the bottom, you can see the plug in here for the main landing gear, and you can see obviously where the wings go right into those slots. The colors on this plane are really neat. I kind of like the orange, white, black, and blue stripe. It's a very different paint job than the reds, the whites, and the blues out there. Very, very different, and I think it really looks good. This piece here is obviously where the elevator is inserted. Looks like, actually I put that back in backwards, but not sure if we contact cement that in place or not. But anyway, tail wheel here is already hinged and everything. It looks like it plugs right into the rudder. Linkages look pretty solid, a different kind that I'm used to, but they have fuel tubing wrapped around them, which is real nice. They left you a little slot here for the elevator to move up and down. An interesting tail hinge design. You notice that the tail hinges are actually these little plastic pieces that are already mounted, and I think the rudder will literally just pop right onto here. This whole thing will slide into place without any glue. So as I get to that step, we'll talk about that and see how that goes in, but it looks like it should go in nicely. Otherwise, guys, real nice looking. Let's go ahead and take a look inside. You can see there's instrument panels and a decent looking pilot in there. You know, sometimes the pilots are kind of goofy looking in these things, but He looks like he knows what he's doing, so we'll let him fly here. As we look inside, it looks like there's a spot right here to put a pin in for the wings. Once the wings go in the sides, there's another slot here for the pin, for another pin as well. And the speed controller and ESC, or the ESC is right in here with a Dean's connector on it. Plenty of cooling, it looks like, that goes up through the front. And it looks like the battery's going to sit right up there as well. As we look into the back, it looks like 2 servos, and looks like they are hooked up with Z-bends instead of using a linkage, which is to me good because it means they're not going to slip. But anyway, guys, real positive lock on the canopy, and it looks like there's plenty of magnet there to hold them down. Overall, guys, real nice on the fuselage. Definitely a really slick looking fuselage. Here's a look at one of the wing panels. It really has a nice shine. Really has a nice finish to it. Again, you do want to be careful with it. It does seem to chip easily, and you can see here on the like the edge here, it has a little bit of paint chipping because the corner got a little dinged in the box. This is normal for most EPO models, but the type of paint they chose to put on this thing does seem to flake a little bit. This kind of thing doesn't bother me too much because I'll just put a black magic marker, run it over there, and clean that up. Or I'll pull out my paintbrush or my airbrush, because I always have my airbrush to clean up these things, and just use some black paint on it to sort of touch that up. One thing I want to show you here too is the spar. The spar is a solid chunk of aluminum. I mean, it was really tough. So they're probably intending on this because it's a sort of an aerobatic plane. They're intending or planning on you probably yanking on this thing pretty hard, but it does seat in there about halfway through. So and it's a very tight fit in there, not really much play at all. So they're planning on having this plane getting loaded up with some G's. Anyway, guys, you can see they have this nice piece of wood glued on here, and that's where the wing pins are going to go together, go in here and here through the cockpit to join both wing panels together. I really do like this color. I think the color is just such a departure from, you know, the reds, whites, and blacks that are out there. It's neat having a sort of an orange black with this this white and blue accents. Real nice. Foam hinge all the way across here. Huge control surface. It's nice they painted the horns for you. Orange on the top and black on the bottom to kind of match, and it really looks good. I've noticed that they went out of their way to protect all the horns and clevises and keep this plane from getting damaged. Even the servo connectors here, they put these little chunks of foam on there to keep it from scraping everything up. And as you can see the sheen, the shine in this finish. So it's a very clean airplane. You see this seam running all the way down here, all the way across here, and all the way up here. It seems almost like they may have run some sort of a spar through the center here. I don't know how they did it exactly, and then they glued this sort of separate piece on to sort of almost glue like two kind of halves this way together to make it stronger somehow. And you can see here on the wingtips, there's a little hole right here and a little mounting surface here to put these two vertical surfaces here for performing better knife edge flying. Anyway, guys, real impressed. Overall quality of this wing is super nice. Here's a look at the rudder and the elevator, and you can see right here these hinges that we sort of looked at as we looked at the tail of the fuselage. You can see these things are just going to sort of snap right in, and the rudder control is going to snap right in here as well. It looks like they did put some wood in there for the tail wheel rod that's going to go in there to steer the tail wheel around. But anyway, three points of contact for this hinge that'll just sort of snap this whole thing into place. Horn is already installed again for you, and the decals are applied, and it has a real nice finish to it. Elevator, same thing. And I know they made this one especially tough. There is a doubler here of plywood that they painted, foam hinges all the way around. Again, they did paint the horn on this side and on the bottom. And as I look at this thing, they ran a carbon rod through here. It probably runs all the way through the center. Yep, I can see it right there. And then they ran a carbon rod this way, and they ran a carbon rod this way. They joined the two halves of these with a torque rod that you can see down in here. And it looks like it's pretty solid. I don't see it flexing too much. A little bit of ding on the tail here from the packaging. Again, not a big deal. I never get through. I never have a plane really come out of the box. It doesn't have some dinging in it. It's just that with this airplane, with the paint they chose, it's just easier to tell on this airplane. But I'll pull out some orange paint and paint that over to touch it up a little bit. But overall, excellent condition of this thing. It's both these parts are just really, really nice and have a really nice shiny finish on them. Here's a quick look at the parts bag and the wing pins that you probably insert from the inside of the airplane, I believe. They give you a wrench here also for probably getting the prop on and off. And a screwdriver, a little different looking than some of the others. In fact, I'll poke this thing through. Looks like actually a real nice screwdriver, so another screwdriver to add to the parts bag. And there's a plastic screw in there. I'm assuming that's probably for the elevator. And it looks like there's a couple of spare linkages here. Real nice finish, and a carbon rod on these vertical surfaces to put on the wingtips. Again, this is for doing better knife edge type flight to give you a little bit more vertical surface than just relying on the fuselage. But really nicely painted and a real nice shape on these things. Included with the plane is this 12.6 prop with a collet type drive, which is kind of nice. And for once, a really nice knurled edge, okay, a knurled prop drive. Usually they're so slick that they don't bite in, but it looks like this is going to bite into the prop nicely. And again, it is a collet type drive, so it'll keep it spinning true. The spinner is a really neat spinner, really long nose, very unique to this airplane. It has a couple of screws here and here to bolt this thing on, and really no gap between the spinner and the propeller the way this thing is mounted in place. But very cool spinner. As I attach it, we'll see how it lines up with the fuselage. Last up is the landing gear. This is just a simple like plug-in fit. No nuts, bolts, screws, glue, or anything. This whole thing will just insert into the bottom of the fuselage. Again, foam wheel pants and everything. A lot of times these things take abuse on grass. We'll see how they hold up as I fly it around. I noticed that one wheel spins nicely and the other one sort of is locked up in there. I think that the axle just got kind of out of alignment, so I'll just have to nudge it that way. I'll stick a tool in there and I'll show you that as the building of the plane goes on. I did notice a little bit of dinging here and here. That's again kind of par for the course sometimes. I think it's really just the paint that they use that just shows up real easily. I'll just throw a little black paint on those and clean them up. But usually when I have wheel pants, you know, the grass is usually beating them up right about there anyway, you know, on this whole underside. So, but overall, the landing gear does seem plenty tough to kind of handle. It'll bend and flex to handle taking off and landing on grass. But when we get it out to the field, we'll see how it works out, and I'll report on how it handles. Last but not least is the instruction manual that Artec includes for the SBOC 342. It actually reads fairly well. I went through this whole thing really quick. There's not a whole lot to it. It looks like there's one screw to put the landing gear on, and the rudder snaps into place. You slide the elevator in. One screw underneath to put the to secure the elevator in place. And then it looks like the wings go on, and you put looks like 2 pins to hold them in place, and then you pretty much just secure your wing vertical surfaces there, and you put your propeller on, and that's a propeller and spinner, and then you're done. So there's really not, there's a couple of screws that put this whole thing together, and that's about it. One thing of importance in here again is the center of gravity on this plane. They do show it from the leading edge, right where it meets the fuselage back, 98 to 108 millimeters. So, you know, as I fly it, if I have any problems with that number, I'll report on it, but that looks like that's probably in about the place it should be. Anyway, guys, real basic instruction manual. It shows you really probably just what you need to know, and it looks like this is going to be a real quick, snap together almost airplane. So, as I get to building this thing, if I run into any issues or find a better way of doing something, or have an upgrade or something I think we can do a little bit better, I'll be sure to point it out in the following video. Here's a look at my completed SBOC 342. It went together very easy. The main wings go together with a spar and 2 pins. The entire tail assembly goes on with just 1 screw, and it's really that simple. The main landing gear goes on with, actually just pops into place, uses 1 screw and a washer. And aside from just mounting your prop and spinner, that's pretty much it, guys. This thing was very, very simple to build. Now, let me show you some of those features in addition to some of the improvements and upgrades that I made to this plane. With the cockpit removed, simply put, these wings just go right together, and there's a single spar that runs between them, and they just plug right in. Once the wings are in, there's simply these two pins, one right here and one right here. And literally they just insert in, they go through the wood that's in each wing half, and literally joins both halves of the wings together. And that's it for assembling and disassembling the wing. The tail fins on this plane are really simple to put on. All you really do is just insert the elevator in, and you put a little foam block in its place, and the rudder actually snaps on with these really nice snap-on hinges. And then a single screw goes down through here and actually goes through the elevator and into the rudder. And it really is a real tough design, the way that they set it up. Then there's two linkages, one for the rudder and one for the elevator, and the entire tail is finished. The landing gear on this airplane went in very easy. As you can see, there's just one screw right here in the center. Now, when I went ahead and I put mine on initially, there's actually a hole on the front side here, and you can kind of see it a little bit, but the screw head just broke off as I screwed it in place. But no big deal. All I did was I just drilled a hole right through the plastic on the other side here and put a screw that I had laying around in the washer in place. And you can see that locks this whole thing into position. Here's a close-up shot of one of the magnets that's on the wing tips here, and this is for mounting the side force generators. Now, these side force generators are totally optional on this airplane. So if you really like to fly the airplane scale, as you can see, you can just really leave the wing just the way it is. Now, here's a look at the side force generator and how it comes right in the box like this. There's a carbon pin right here in the center that goes into the foam, and that's already secured in there. And there's two rare earth magnets that are glued into position. These go on and off very easily. And you can see here there's a tiny hole right in the front here, and of course a magnet here and a magnet on the other side. And very carefully, all you need to do is just sort of insert these in. The magnets will sort of grab it. You push them on, and the side force generators are on. So they go on and off real easily. So it's your option. They really do help with the knife edge flying of the airplane. And but if you don't like them on there and you like it scale, you can just leave them off. One method I discovered for storing your side force generators is just to go ahead and use the magnets that are already in place on the wing and on the side force generator itself. And rather than losing these things or having them get broke in a car or something like that, you can literally just drop them right in place, and the magnets will kind of hold your side force generator in place there on the wing, and that way you'll always know where it is. The single most important part of this video is adding some cooling to the airplane. One interesting thing about it is there actually was absolutely no cooling whatsoever for the speed controller really, and for the motor. Now, there are these really nice intakes here, and you can see here that I put a flashlight in the airplane. The air does flow into the speed controller compartment and into the battery compartment to help cool it. But these holes weren't there before. I had to put them in there. And as you can see from the other side as well, same thing. The flashlight shines right through, and as you can see, there's plenty of cooling air that actually goes in there right now. But again, the airplane had none from the factory. Now let me go ahead and take the spinner off and the cowling off, and I'll show you exactly how to do that to your plane. One small note to make as I'm getting this spinner and cowling off, they gave you a wrench that's both 10mm and 8mm, and it's kind of nice. It's going to stay in my flight bag because I usually always need a 10mm to get things off with. But anyway, it's a nice little tool that they give you. With the prop and spinner removed, you can go ahead and just take the cowl right off. The cowl is held on by 4 magnets that you can see right here, top, bottom, left, and right, and on the airplane as well. There's one on the top, one on the bottom, and right and left. Now, as you can see here, looking at the airplane, I left the flashlight in there. You can see here that all these areas were actually closed off. There was no hole here. And same thing on the cowling here, when you look at the inside, even the underside, there was no way for air to exit. There was just the really nice scoops that they give you up front. But simply put, you know, the battery compartment is back here. All you need to do is just take a drill bit or something and just cut a hole right in there. Same thing on the other side. I just went ahead and made a hole in this side as well. And what that does is it actually very nicely lines up both of these spinner holes, or both of these cowling holes, right with the ram air. So the ram air is going to go right through here and straight into your ESC compartment. And if you look into this hole right here, if you look way in there, the speed controller is sitting right there, that little black thing there. So it's definitely a really good idea to go ahead and cut those holes out. And let me show you that again. Right here, okay, on this side, just go right through to the battery compartment. You can make them as big or as small as you want, and right through here. And that is going to open up just tons of motor cooling and ESC cooling. Now, while I've got the cowling off, one thing I really wanted to point out was the 4 screws here that hold the motor on with this X mount. The first thing you want to do is take all 4 of those screws off and go ahead and you know, just pull the motor mount out real quick. Take some thin CA and run it into all those wooden holes, because they didn't put any in there. And if you just kind of soak the holes a little bit, let the CA completely dry, and then put your screws back in, you're going to have much better threads in the wood. And that's a pretty common thing. But what I wanted to point out as well too is these 4 screw holes in the X mount, in the metal part itself, all have oval holes in them. And that's real important, because what that lets you do is it lets you shift the motor around a little bit. And what I found is when this thing came stock from the box, the motor shaft was pretty much almost dead center, but a little tiny bit off. So, and you can see here that it actually lines up pretty nicely with the center of the spinner. Everything kind of lines up nicely, the spinner and the cowl opening. But the way I was able to get it to do that was to actually go back in here and take these 4 screws, and all these planes are going to be slightly different, is just loosen these screws, again, after I put the CA in them and let the CA dry. Loosen these screws, and then again, you can shift this motor, you can move it around and put it where you need to. And I found that I needed to move mine down and to the left side a little bit, and then tighten them all back up. And when I put the cowling right back on, and then put the spinner on, I had a really nice alignment, and the whole spinner looks really slick and lines up nicely with this thing. So just keep in mind that those 4 screws back there, again, soak them with CA, let them dry, and then you can use these 4 screws to slightly move this motor around and really help line that spinner up with the cowl opening. In addition to adding cooling intake holes to the front firewall motor area of the airplane, it's also important to add some exhaust cooling to get all that air out. It's not enough just to put holes in the front. You got to put something in the back. So right back here in the tail section with my hobby knife, I just cut a big hole here and very carefully just sand it around here. I could take some black magic marker and some black paint and all that and run right over this, and you'd probably never even know it was there. But I left it that way so I could show you in the video here how that is. So you got to be careful, because there is a bulkhead like right here, and there's a bulkhead like right here, and this seemed to be the best place to put this exhaust hole. So again, it's not enough to put cooling openings in the front to intake the air. You have to have some way to get it out of the airplane. It's a real important thing and a real critical thing to have on a plane like this, especially one that may be hovering and doing 3D maneuvers and stuff like that. But it's a real simple thing to add to this plane. It's no big deal at all. Just cutting 2 holes of foam in the front and cutting 1 hole in the foam here in the back, and now you've got air circulating through the entire airplane. Here's a look at the cooling system from the top side of the plane inside the battery compartment area. And again, this is real important. Again, you got air holes that we cut in the front here to let air in. That all comes in down here through the battery compartment, and the ESC I tucked into the side here, and it gets plenty of cooling air along with the battery that fits right up front. And all the air flows back here. The last thing you got to take care of is this little section right here. This would really, again, it's not enough to get the air in the airplane, but you got to get it out. And you can see right down in here, into this hole here, you can see way down in there that hole that we cut in the bottom of the airplane. But this little bulkhead here acts as a wall and stops the air from getting out. So it's a real important idea, and I already took a razor knife, a hobby knife, and I cut these out. Take this one out and take this little block out. Now you've opened up this whole section to let air flow all the way through and down out that hole in the back. And again, this is real important to keep the ESC cool and keep the battery compartment cool. You definitely want to just make a few holes in this airplane so the air can circulate from front to back to keep the ESC and the battery cool. One last area here on the tail that I decided to make a small improvement to. It's not real critical, you don't necessarily have to do this, but this is the kind of thing that makes the ground handling of the airplane a little bit better. I noticed that the tail wheel was moving around side to side on the axle, and when you're ground handling, taxiing this airplane, that can be kind of a pain if that thing's moving around. So really all I did to mine was I took a tiny piece of antenna tube or anything that you have for a spacer, and I cut a little piece and slid it over. I unscrewed this nut here first, and I slid it over here and put a washer there. So the idea there was to sort of line up the tail wheel, okay, with the wire that comes out of the rudder. So as you can see here, with that spacer in place and the wheel reattached, it doesn't slide side to side, where this thing was sliding back and forth on that axle like crazy. So this tightens it up and drastically improves the ground handling of this airplane. One item that I talked about earlier in the video when I was showing you the parts was these wheels. Both of them were not really spinning all that freely. There's not a real easy way to explain exactly how I line these back up again, but you can see here that there is some movement to them, and these are all glued in place. But what I ended up doing was going down there and digging sort of around the foam where that plastic, that white plastic bushing is in there, and I was able to push that bushing. It was either backwards or forwards. I can't remember which way I moved it, but it's a little ambiguous. But you can see here as you move this, the wheel well gets close to the side of the wheel. So you just have to sort of push it and line it up and get it to the point where you've got an equal distance here, 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 and here, so the wheel spins freely. And then once it's spinning free like this, down there in the bottom, down in this section here where you see that white bushing way down in there, you can kind of see there I got some contact cement around there, and that's what I did was with a very thin, like a screwdriver, or whatever you have that's long. If you have a piece of push rod or something, you can just shove some contact cement back in there and then line the wheel up so this thing is parallel, so it's not crooked this way, it's not crooked that way, it's kind of lined up with the center. And then once you have it lined up, just kind of leave it there, let that contact cement fully dry, and then this wheel will spin real freely in there. So again, you may just have to tweak this and align this. These all probably come a little bit different from the factory. Some are probably dead on, and some are probably a little bit off. But that may just be something that you have to sort of work with. And again, just kind of adjust the position of that plastic bushing that's in there. And again, get it so the wheel is parallel and it's nice in the tray or nice in the wheel well there. And then just use some contact cement around that bushing right down in there. And as you can see here, I got a real nice spinning wheel now. When it comes to the magnets on the canopy, for normal flying, if you're just going to fly your SBOC relatively gently and just do some normal aerobatics, loops and rolls, hammerheads, things like that, the two magnets that they gave you here and on the canopy side were sufficient. But for aggressive maneuvering, 3D maneuvering and so forth, we actually had the canopy fly off the airplane a couple of times. So if you're going to fly it aggressively or do some 3D with it, you can plan to add something else to attach the magnet, the canopy on a little bit better. Some rare earth magnets both here, and as you can see on the opposite side here of the canopy, really help keep this thing in place. Really all I had to do was take a hobby knife, just cut away a little bit of the foam here and here, and using some foam safe CA. You CA these in place so they are flush with the rest of the foam frame here. Using a little bit of accelerator to lock them in place, and then you can see here I put a piece of Scotch tape over just to kind of help keep them on. But again, you want to make sure these things are flush all the way around. And again, same thing on the canopy side. Now, I'll go ahead and attach this thing for you. My canopy's been out in the sun quite a bit because I've been flying it a lot here lately. So mine's bubbled up a little bit. But as you can see, it attaches on there pretty firmly. And I did a pretty strong test with this thing where I just actually pick this thing up and shake it around. And the canopy will not come off. You can actually hold the entire airplane up just by holding the canopy. So again, if you're going to do some 3D maneuvering with this plane, you can kind of expect to need to put probably just a few more magnets in. A few things to note about the battery compartment are really the placement of the battery and the thickness of the battery that you need. There's a shelf here, so you need sort of a thin battery to be able to peel this thing up and get it off here. And you can see this 4-cell battery, this 2500 30C pack. Enriched power from Motion RC fits in there real nicely. As you can see, as it goes in here, you've got to be able to sort of push it down, and you have to be able to lift it up sort of to get the Velcro off. So that's the need for really having a thin battery like this to make the whole thing work. You notice here that I have 2 pieces of Velcro, white and black, and those represent really the 2 positions for really flying this thing. If you're going to do sort of more normal flying, you want this thing all the way far forward. Really resting on the white Velcro, and that's enough to keep this thing in place. It's not going to come out of there just the way you see it. A 1/2 inch to 1 inch of difference in placement of this battery really makes a big difference in the way it flies. For 3D flying, like you saw in the video, we had it all the way back here, right on this where this shelf ends right here. And for those of you who really like hardcore 3D and want to really move the CG back even further, this is the battery stop on the top of the canopy, and you can see that you have a lot to trim. You can go back almost, you actually can go back a little more than an entire inch if you want to trim some of this way, and you can actually move the battery back even further. Now you can see as you put this thing on and off, as I mentioned, the paint is kind of brittle on this thing, but it's not a big deal. The way that this thing fits on, you can see that almost all of that gets covered up by the top of the canopy. When it comes to eliminating play in your control surfaces, here's a quick and easy way and a cheap way to get rid of some of the play. Here's your elevator servo, here's your rudder servo, and I noticed, particularly with the elevator, that there was just a big hole in the horn here, and this push rod was kind of small. Now, as I grab the elevator here and I move it back and forth, you can see there's really no play at all between those. But before, there was so much play right here. The easiest way to clean that up, and the cheapest way, just take a little bit of CA, thin CA, and I went ahead and saturated this hole with it without removing anything, just the way you see it. And then once I sort of soaked this hole right here with the CA, I hit it with some accelerator and just let it dry. And then once it's done drying, you can go ahead and move this thing, and you may hear a little snap as it breaks because the CA really doesn't like to stick to metal too much. What that does is the CA fills up the gap between the hole and the push rod, and it really eliminates all the play in there. Same thing for the rudder, and you can do that one on here as well. But anyway, that's a great way to get rid of all the play and tighten up your control surfaces. Now, depending on how you're going to fly your plane, if you're going to do basic aerobatics and just sort of general flying around with the airplane, it's probably not a bad idea to connect your clevis to the outermost hole. Mine's set up for 3D, so we went ahead and moved our aileron clevis in one hole, and that gave us a lot of aileron throw. As we move on to the elevator, a little bit different story here. Again, normal flying, use the outermost hole, but you can see here in this case for flying 3D, like you saw in the video, we moved actually to the 3rd notch in, almost all the way in, and that gives us lots of elevator travel. As you can see here, same thing on the rudder. You really want a lot of rudder for 3D. Most 3D guys pretty much know that already, but you can see here we went 2 holes in or 3 holes in, and that gives us lots and lots of rudder deflection. Alright guys, that concludes this video on the Arctec SBOC 342 from MotionRC.com. Check it out there. Also be sure to check out the flying video on this airplane. Again, A lot of the flying was done by Steve Washington, and again, he does a tremendous job doing some serious hardcore 3D with this thing. Gotta look at it, it's pretty awesome. Again, one thing to note again about this airplane with the building guide, guys, really is the cooling on this airplane. As you saw from the video, there really wasn't a whole lot they incorporated. It almost looked like they intended to, but they almost forgot to put the holes in it. But you get those holes in there, so the air is flowing from the front through the intakes and out the back. You'll keep this thing running cool and won't have any problems with it at all. And again, the video you saw, everything you saw, all the flying with this, we flew it real hard with the entire stock setup, and it ran as nice as it did, and it's just a phenomenal setup, guys. Anyway, guys, for this video and other videos like it, just check out rcinformer.com, RC Informer on YouTube, and RC Informer on Facebook. Once again, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.